Welcome back to the Microsoft DP-600 practice questions series. Implementing analytics solutions using Microsoft Fabric. This is episode 9. Starting a new topic, Pipelines and Dataflows Part 1. Over the next 12 questions, we'll cover data flows and Power Query, query folding, data pipelines and scheduling, and getting data into the lakehouse with shortcuts and copy. Each question gives you 10 seconds. Let's begin. Question 1 of 12. You use a data flow to load a dataset from one lake into a warehouse. You need to add a Power Query step that identifies the maximum values for the numeric columns. Which function should you include? Review the options on screen. You have 10 seconds. The correct answer is D. Table.Profile returns per column profiling statistics, minimum, maximum, average, count, and more, so a single step surfaces the maximum of every numeric column. Table max and table. Maxn return whole rows not per column stats, and table range just slices a range of rows. Question 2 of 12. A Power Query query has two columns, order date and shipping date. You need a new column with the number of days between them for each row. Which Power Query function should you use? Review the options on screen. You have 10 seconds. The correct answer is B. Subtracting the two dates produces a duration, and Duration.Days returns the whole number of days in that duration. DateTime local now returns the current time, duration, from converts a value into a duration, and date from converts a value into a date. None of them return a day count. Question 3 of 12. You build a data flow that reads from an Azure SQL database and performs an inner join. You must ignore spaces in the values when joining and minimize development effort. What should you do? Review the options on screen. You have 10 seconds. The correct answer is B. A join is a merge, append only stacks rows. Fuzzy matching tolerates small differences such as extra spaces or casing, so it satisfies ignore spaces with no extra cleanup steps, the least effort. Building a lookup table would add data and maintenance you don't need. Question 4 of 12. Dataflow Gen 2 query. Query 1 loads data from an Azure SQL database, transforms it, then filters it, but you discover it loads all the data before transforming. You need Query 1 to use query folding. What should you do? Review the options on screen. You have 10 seconds. The correct answer is D. Query folding pushes operations back to the source, but a non-foldable transformation early in the query stops folding for every step after it. Moving the foldable filter ahead of the transformations lets the source apply the filter, so only the needed rows are loaded. The other options don't restore folding. Question 5 of 12. You are building a data flow that combines two lakehouses. One of the queries includes an added custom step written in M. Complete each statement about how the query executes. Review the options on screen. You have 10 seconds. Here are the correct selections shown on screen. A custom M step usually can't be translated back to the source, so it breaks folding. Only some of the steps, those before it, fold at the source. The non-foldable added custom step is then executed by the Microsoft Power Query mashup engine rather than at either lakehouse. Question 6 of 12. You have a data pipeline that must run every 4 hours on Mondays and Fridays only. To what should you set repeat for the schedule? Review the options on screen. You have 10 seconds. The correct answer is C. Only the weekly repeat option lets you pick specific days of the week, Monday and Friday, after which you set it to repeat every 4 hours on those days. Daily and hourly can't limit the run to specific weekdays, and by the minute is far too frequent. Question 7 of 12. A data pipeline has 2 activities that run in sequence. You need to ensure that a failure of the first activity will not block the second activity from running. Which conditional path should you configure between them? Review the options on screen. You have 10 seconds. The correct answer is B. The upon completion path runs the next activity whether the first one succeeds or fails, so a failure won't block activity 2. Upon success would skip activity 2 on failure, upon failure runs only on failure, and upon skip runs only when the first activity is skipped. Question 8 of 12. In a data pipeline, you need an activity that copies data from CSV files in Azure Storage into Lakehouse 1, and the activity must support Power Query M formula language expressions. Which activity should you add? Review the options on screen. You have 10 seconds. The correct answer is A. A Dataflow Gen 2 activity uses Power Query M for its transformations, so it's the one activity here that supports M expressions while loading the CSVs. Copy data moves data but doesn't run M. Notebook uses Spark code and script runs SQL. Question 9 of 12. Warehouse 1 has Table 1 and Lakehouse 1 has a Delta Table 2. You need to persist data from Table 1 into Table 2 using a low-code interface. What should you do? Review the options on screen. You have 10 seconds. The correct answer is C. A Dataflow Gen 2 is a low-code, Power Query-based way to read Table 1 and write it to the Lakehouse Delta Table 2. The notebook options require Spark code, not low-code, and 1 even copies in the wrong direction, while a stored procedure can't write to a Lakehouse Delta table like this. Question 10 of 12. You need to add data to Lakehouse 1 from a CSV file in an Azure Storage account outside of Fabric. The solution must minimize development effort. What should you use? Review the options on screen. You have 10 seconds. The correct answer is B. A OneLake shortcut references the CSV in the external Azure Storage account without copying or transforming it, so the data appears in Lakehouse 1 with essentially no development effort. A copy job, pipeline, or Dataflow would each require building and maintaining an ingestion process. Question 11 of 12. In Lakehouse LH1 you plan to create a OneLake shortcut to an Amazon S3 bucket. You need to configure authentication for the connection. Which 2 values should you provide? Review the options on screen. You have 10 seconds. The correct answers are A and B. A shortcut to Amazon S3 authenticates with the bucket's access key ID and secret access key, the standard AWS credential pair. SAS tokens and account keys are Azure storage concepts, and a connection string isn't how S3 shortcut credentials are supplied. Question 12 of 12. You need to create a shortcut in Lakehouse 1 to an Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 account named Storage 1. Which connection scheme and endpoint should you specify? Review the options on screen. You have 10 seconds. Here are the correct selections shown on screen. A shortcut to a DLS Gen 2 uses the secure a BFSS connection scheme and the DFS data lake endpoint, for example, HTTPS, storage 1 DFS core Windows Net. The blob and file endpoints belong to other storage services, and a BFS is the non-TLS variant that shouldn't be used. And that's all 12 questions on pipelines and data flows, part 1. How many did you get right out of 12? Let me know in the comments. Episode 10 continues pipelines and data flows. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and please like and share if this helped. See you in episode 10.